Anyway, I was having a dream. This was a while ago before I was diagnosed, but still within recent memory. I was having a dream. I was in the electric chair, and I was going to be electrocuted. Or crimes I don't even know of, maybe not even a crime. I was just going to be electrocuted just because.
I was jurying an art exhibition for the Fairfield Visual Arts Show, and there was a juror's talk. And I was putting out some ideas that I thought were important, and this voice in the back says, "Well, I don't really know about that." And I looked over and I said, "Well, could you say more about that?" And I didn't recognize Jim because he had long hair, he had a big beard. He presented a kind of counterpoint to what I was saying. I started discussing it with him. We developed this whole big dialogue, and it was really fascinating. He was talking on a level that I'm most happy with. He really had a lot of deep ideas about how art worked. And so I said, "Great, well, please continue to participate. And by the way, what's your name?" And he said, "Jim." And then he said, "Kimberly." I did a double take and looked and said, "Jim."
So after a year, he was no longer able to work in this manner because he didn't have the strength or mobility he needed to sit up in a wheelchair any longer. He was completely confined to laying flat down in bed. I was there visiting him one day. We were talking about what he wanted to do next. He needed to have a project. He needed to be able to communicate what was important to him in life. And he was trying to figure out how he was going to be able to do that now that he had such restricted and limited movement. And as I was visiting, he stopped breathing.
Last year there was a big fire here. His lungs were weak at the time and there was tons of smoke, and so he couldn't breathe.
We called an ambulance. The ambulance took him to the hospital, and in the hospital they put a breathing mechanism to keep him alive. And the doctor called me in and said, "There's a big decision that has to be made right now. I need to ask Jim if he wants us to remove this breathing apparatus, and then he'll die within a few minutes, or does he want us to perform a tracheotomy, and he'll have to live with artificial support." And she explained to Jim the process of what would happen if he decided to end his life, and how they would take out this breathing apparatus, and then that would be it. And he agreed that it was time. And the next day, I get a call from his doctor saying that Jim changed his mind. After I left, he decided he's not done. He's got more to give and more to say.
They ended up having to do tracheotomy to help him breathe better. He can't cough up phlegm, so he has a cough assist that sucks the stuff out of his lungs.
I got to get a cough assist. Yeah, that happens. It happens every hour, at least. What's it do? Obviously, that's pulling sputum out of my lungs. In other words, snot out of my lungs. Otherwise, I would drown. Probably wouldn't make it through the day. Without the machine, without somebody to run it, I'd give it about 24 hours. That's part of the deal. It's part of the excitement.
He just thought about pushing forward, just the next phase of life, maybe the next adventure. What's next? What goes beyond this?
He wanted to do art again, and he said, "Make me a helmet with something that I could use my head to paint." And so I researched, and I saw a little headpiece for artists on Etsy, and I ordered him a little headpiece, and he wanted me to modify it with the pencil. He wanted to do paint, brushes, and pencil, and it needed to be spring-loaded, so I had to modify it with spring, and it took about 2 weeks before he was finally happy with it. He did some really amazing work with pencil and paint. But then he wanted to do digital.
You got to find a means to get it out. If it's a stick strapped onto a hat, you can move your neck, wiggle your nose, or whatever. That's all you need.
I work more intuitively than intellectually, partially because I'm just a little bit lazy and I don't like gathering information and facts and details and really thinking them out in an orderly fashion. I just go with my gut. If it feels right, it is right.
Stay with it. And if it's in you, do it. If it's not, do something else. You know, I think everybody has the potential. You hear the, oh, I can't draw a straight line. I could never be an artist. I can wiggle my little finger. It's all I can do. I'm getting along just fine with art. It's in the mind, and that's a big part of what I would like to convey and tell people. It's in your mind. You either want to do it or you don't. Everybody has it. It's a matter of whether you want to do it or not. And if your only goal is to become successful, what I think is lost in art and music and sports is everybody's got to be the hero. Everybody's got to be the professional. There's a very small amount of room for the professionals to do art for the sake of doing art, for your own pleasure, and a small group of friends you have that appreciate it. That's enough. If it becomes significant and you become famous, well, that's great. That's great. But if not, just do it. It's a hobby, if nothing else. Learn about it. It's a never-ending quest. There's no figuring it out. There's no finished product. It's infinite in the number of ways it can be perceived or manifest itself.
The point that I came to is, I think what Jim's work tells me is that the body has its limitations, and for whatever reason, the limitations may increase. But the creative spirit is just that. It's not in the body. In Jim's case, what you see is that he has a creative spirit that will out.
I do want this to be inspirational. The fact that if I can do it in my position, that's really great. I'm going to contribute something to the arts. I want what I've said and my life, the story of my life, to mean something to art. I started out going, well, where does art come from? Does it come from your skill? Does it come from hand-eye coordination? Are you more intelligent? You know, what is it? Where does it come from? Is it practice? Is it quality of materials? And of course I know that that's not true, that it's something more than that. But proof of concept. I've had my legs taken away. I've had my arms taken away. I've had my hands taken away. So the types of materials I'm able to use and the means in which to use them has been removed from the equation, yet I can still do art. And some of the best art I've done, certainly as far as drawing and painting, but from where it comes from too. More importantly than anything, I've lost all inhibition. I have no concern about that invisible person looking over my shoulder, judging what I'm doing. You know, they're gone. I can just truly create from my heart or my soul. That's what we have to get in touch with.
You know, I've spent 35 years teaching, and I keep trying to hook my students up with their creative capacity. And what Jim shows us is that a creative capacity is a force in its own right, and that it brings to you life. It gives you a life worth living.
He asked me to meet him at this cafe. He said that there was an apartment up above the cafe, this bakery, where he was trying to get an apartment in San Francisco. He had this application for this apartment. An hour and a half went by, and I said, okay, are you going to fill this application out or not? I'm going to get going. And he said, could you help fill out this application? I'm dyslexic. I can't read or write.
When I first had dyslexia, I didn't know it. It was in kindergarten. I remember there was a little game where we fished for words and read the words. I had a little competitive streak in me. And I'd look at them, I was good at hooking them, and boy, as long as they were 3-4 letters or less, I could read them better than anyone in the class. Started getting into 2 syllables, and we started lining them up into sentences. Something was wrong. And I didn't realize it at first, but it became apparent to the teachers, and then it became apparent to me, and then it became embarrassing. The concern at the house, and the disappointment came from not being as good as the other kids. The obvious disappointment on my father's face and demeanor. Why can't this kid read? Because they had no word for dyslexia when I was growing up, and somebody who couldn't read or write, there was a stigma attached to that. It was called stupid or retarded. None of these instilled a lot of self-confidence. Of course, the kids, being as kids are, the bullying got to be pretty intense at times. So I was taken to doctors, and a doctor prescribed pills for me. And when I got these pills, I couldn't sleep, couldn't stay still, couldn't focus. Did I read any better? No. It wasn't until much later when somebody at school saw me with the pills and recognized them as black beauties that I really understood what these pills were. It was amphetamine, essentially. From grade school all the way through high school, I was expected to take these pills. Finally, I just decided I didn't like them, and I started selling them to my classmates instead of taking the pills myself. But I ended up going to a private school, and the class was filled with all sorts of disability. Physically, mentally, some were violent, some were criminals. That was my environment. That was my reality. I never learned how to read. I have a 5th grade reading level right now. But I'm completely confident that I'm relevant in the world and have a purpose. I did what I could do, and I don't know. Could I draw better because I couldn't read and write? Is my brain configured differently so I have better hand-eye coordination? Or did I draw better because I just migrated to what I was good at and picked up a pencil and drew, and nobody could say whether it was right or wrong? Did that kickstart my art? Well, it certainly influenced it. You got a Kleenex over there? Well, I have a fear of Kleenex, yeah. A fear of Kleenex. Is that what you're talking about? Kimberly Clark. Yeah, Kleenex. Well, I'm a Kimberly. I'm the last remaining Kimberly who could carry on the family name. Unfortunately, I didn't spread my seed, so that Kimberly Clark, dies with me. But I'm sure the tissue company will manage just fine without me.
More, and more Kleenex for war.
I was always fascinated as a kid by the little nut and bolt sculptures. And I wanted a welding kit. So I wanted to put this stuff together and build things, modify my bicycle or something. I couldn't afford such a thing on my own, so it was Christmas, birthday. I want a welding kit. No, you'll put your eye out, kind of thing. So finally, one day, we got a welding kit. And I was probably 12 or 13. I just started carving wood a little bit, too. It kind of happened simultaneously. But, I got bored with the nuts and bolts pretty quick and started doing more figurative, more realistic sculptures. And basically with coat hangers, I was the cheapest. all kinds of work, mainly just coffee table size figures and horses and landscapes and all kinds of stuff like that.
I always wanted to weld so I could make things like that horse. Wire coat hangers. I had a big ornamental iron shop. They're big, huge space. You got to make a living and find the time for your craft or your art, because nobody's going to pay you for it unless you're the lucky half of 1%. Whatever it is, it's probably not even that. There's probably more billionaires than there are successful artists. I did do ornamental iron. I built beautiful handrails and banisters that go on, multi-million-dollar homes in Pacific Heights in San Francisco and Tiburon and Walnut Creek down here. There's art. Let's say there's craft involved in that, and certainly there's a skill level that you have to maintain. And of course, you need all the tools for welding and cutting and a space to do it, which enables you to have everything at hand to build a sculpture, build an installation. But the mindset is completely different. One instance, you're building for a customer, and another instance, you're building for yourself. When you're doing work for yourself, it's, what do I want? What do I want to see? What moves me?
The horse is more a traditional metal sculpture. It's probably the only metal sculpture I've done since I was 20. I build things from the inside out. I built the skeleton to have the horse standing there, and I'm looking at it going, wow, it's kind of cool, but it's not saying anything. So I had the big chain and wrapped it around its neck and let it drag on the ground, and all of a sudden it said something. That chain tells the story of that horse.
When you're building for a customer, it's what do they want? What moves them? What are they willing to pay for? Is it safe? All these other elements get into it, and you're still able to sneak some creativity into it, of course. There's a difference between a ornamental railing that I might make and an ornamental railing that a non-artist would make. I'm trying to make something beautiful and appropriate. It fits in the space, and I take a certain amount of pride in it. Once it was installed, there was no job I didn't walk away from and look back at it and just go, wow, we just built that. That's beautiful.
Jim's a genius. He can build anything, make anything, figure out anything.
I always had the bicycle being modified or repaired, or building little push cars or things like this until I got a car. And of course, I did my own repairs on it and was very interested in cars. Motors and motorcycles especially. It's in my DNA. First time I saw a motorcycle or a mini bike riding in the dirt, I had to have it. Of course, my father said, hell no. But as soon as I could buy my own, I went and bought one. Broke my leg, broke my arm, broke my ankle. Come to the territory.
I've always dabbled in the mechanic. Always been interested. I took welding classes and machine shop classes and automotive classes. And then I built that bike. Just because watching West Coast choppers going, I could do that. And the other goal was to build it for as cheaply as possible. Just to prove that it could be done. You have to have a multi-million-dollar shop with employees and fancy tools. I think I paid $100 for the motorcycle. I chopped it up and welded it up and put it together. I don't know how many man-hours, lots of man-hours, but just materials. I bet I got $1,500 in that bike, compared to $50,000. That's nothing. Kind of off the track thing I was doing. My mind wanders off to this project and that. I was trying to build an airplane at one point, with bamboo and bed sheets.
I was really young in my career, and and Jim had graduated from the San Francisco Art Institute. And, living in Fairfield, we were all in Fairfield, this sort of anytown USA. How did we end up here? And, he was the real deal. He was an artist, and that was very rare in this town.
I was doing installation work. I'd do a couple pieces a year at my low point, probably, and mostly with Shelley Willis.
Then it was years later, I went off to Minnesota, and when I came back, I was working in Sonoma, and of course the first person I called was Jim, and I asked him to do a piece in Sonoma. So he used these cots that he'd found.
The stretchers found me, actually, I guess. I was looking for metal at a scrapyard in Mare Island. There they were, laying in a dark corner, probably 2,000 to 3,000 stretchers, just in a stack. They were striking. Of course, in the current political situation, it's in everybody's mind, so I'm looking at that going, something's got to be done with that. Hey, knock it off!
Throw it, Ellie.
Anyway, what was the question again? Oh, how is it like my other work? Yeah, well, and it's important to me, and it hangs. There seems to be a theme of hanging. Now, I don't necessarily think that I'm going to do a piece that hangs, but it seems to be a preferred means. If you go through my last 5 significant pieces, all the way back to the Art Institute, I started hanging things. There's this romantic sweep to the piece, and then there's stretchers, which are for carrying the dead and wounded. So there's a type of balance there. The actual construction of the process is, I may as well be digging a trench. The process happens in my head. You can't realize it until you've gotten to the space, until you've hung it up. And it's the title of the piece pretty much sums it up, Leap of Faith. Do or die, don't ask why, just do or die. And coming out on a stretcher is a consequence. It's a very serious, very likely consequence. And you can apply that across the board, anytime, any place, any war you've ever gone into. The feedback from viewers, it's just been really interesting. Well, the day school kids here, they come out and they notice the shadows on the ground that are cast at high noon. And they're going, oh, look, it looks like holes. Like perfectly rectangular holes, like grave sites. And then my niece came out and she was a little breezy that day, and they're kind of oscillating like this. She's, oh, look, it's like they're being carried. It's going, oh, that's creepy. And then some of them are more translucent than others. There's quite a range or period of time in which these things were constructed. Some are for Korea War and some are Vietnam. The ones that are translucent say, oh, those are the people that made it, and the dark ones are the people that die. I'm going, oh, well, that's interesting. A lot of good feedback. Right, well, this piece is full of surprises that way, but it was like the viewing public that brought it to my attention. I was too entrenched in getting it up. I got a pretty good head for mechanics and kind of just bonehead structural construction, but I don't know. It'll all fail. I could have busted off a corner of the building, and it may still.
I can't believe we got permission to do it.
It might have fallen and killed somebody.
I can't believe my bosses let me do it, or the board of directors let us do it.
These trees might have just caved in on one. I have no idea. So that's what I'm worried about when I'm building the piece.
He did a piece called The Superimposer. It involved a 6-foot panel, and on one side of the panel was the portrait of Osama bin Laden, and on the other side of the panel was an American flag. And the panel was mounted in a frame that allowed it to turn, and then it was geared up to an exercise bike. And if you got on the exercise bike and began to ride it, the panel would begin to spin, and it spun faster and faster until Osama bin Laden turned red, white, and blue. It shows you both the sense of humor, but also a kind of fearless willingness to say how he perceives things, and almost an affection for taboo, for going places where, artists can't really be restrained, and Jim is in no way restrained. This piece took on greater significance because it was juried into an exhibition. It was installed in the exhibition, and then the arts administrator of the city of Fairfield looked at it and said, that's inappropriate for a government building, and he took the piece out of the show. So that's an illegal act of censorship.
This five-nipple beast is just a greedy, selfish, self-conscious, insecure beast pissing on a rabbit out of jealousy, because the rabbit really just doesn't care about anything the five-nipple beast cares about. So it's pissing on it, trying to diminish it. Just kind of petty, ego-based life form that we run into on a daily basis. Kind of like the guy who runs the country. And whether they're nipples or penises, it doesn't matter. It's art.
We both were going to the Art Institute in San Francisco when I first met Jim. Most of us were learning at that point how to really let go of any preconceived notions of or ideas of what art was and how to find your true self in your art. That was all information that was unnecessary to Jim. We ended up falling in love, getting married, and had a beautiful marriage, 10, 11 years together, making art together collaboratively. I was primarily a painter. I'm a painter, and he painting, sculpting, anything he could use, any material he could use.
The city had just built this performing arts center, and I was trying to transform the front part of it into an exhibition space. And I met Laurie and Jim and saw some of the work that Jim was doing, and I invited him to do a site-specific installation at the gallery. He made something that was very, very unusual during that time and in the place that we were at, and for this community that had very little connection to art.
I've been fascinated by cathedrals, overwhelming, ridiculously tall ceilings and arches and symmetry and stained glass windows.
I remember him explaining what he wanted to do, especially around engaging the public. And it just seemed so outlandish and imaginative and humble. It changed the way I thought about art. It changed my views of what was possible and made a huge impact on me as a curator. It was such a grand vision. Even the opening, where he was going to invite Harley-Davidson riders and clubs to come and celebrate the opening and roast a pig in the courtyard of the exhibition space, and bringing these giant boulders that were counterbalanced with these giant bones that he was going to make and install like a cathedral in this long, skinny gallery space.
It's designed to feel like a cathedral. The paintings are the stained glass windows, all presidents that I remember in my lifetime. The society and its government and its rulers. And the paintings are written kind of in like a serial killer would write it. That's the basic intent and feeling of it.
Honestly, I didn't know if he would pull it off, but he did it. He did every bit of it. And with, of course, Laurie, their collaborations, they sort of spoke their own language, and it was magnificent. It was like something I've never seen before or since.
How about the walls? The installation, iron, it's heavy, it's got some balls, it's intimidating, which I like. And that's how I work. It feels like me. I think the assignment was war. I chose Cold War. The impression when people would walk through it and be kind of like, is this part of the building? Or, because it's designed to look very much like part of the building. The greatest compliment I had, a guy's walking down the ramp with his dog, and he just basically walks through, but his dog stops and won't walk through, just stood fast, and he had to kind of coax his dog past there. That's the best compliment on a piece of work I've ever had. When you reach down to a dog's fight or flight mode, then you're working on the right level. One person, remember, what was her name?
Billy.
Billy. She was a heck of an artist. I actually had a little bit of a crush on her. I was thinking, we really think alike, and somebody had to tap me on the shoulder going, Jesus, a lesbian. I'm going, oh, no wonder we got along so well. She said to me at one point, your skill level is far above anybody else's. Where'd you learn to do this? And of course, I'm construction and interest and taking classes at welding. He says, that's why you're able to do a lot of this so easily. I've always kind of had a hand-eye coordination, when it came to throwing rocks or bouncing a ball, or I tended to be better than the nerdy kid across the street or something, if that's any kind of reference.
So I went onto his website, and I scrolled down and got to this large series of black and white paintings. They were bold, they were a statement, they excited me. I had such a hard time picking one because they were all marvelous. But I landed on this one, Zebra Fight. At the time I selected it and purchased it, this piece was in Jim's show up in San Francisco, so we had to wait quite a while. So finally the day arrived.
It arrived and we unrolled it on the floor and sort of just were overwhelmed with the whole idea of how it was made and, of course, the imagery that it portrayed.
I still didn't get the full effect of it until my husband stretched it and we were able to find a place for it and hang it. That's when the true energy of this painting came to life.
Once we got it up on the wall, like Carol mentioned, it really took on a presence in the room and has been very strong focal point in the whole house.
You can see the tracks of his wheelchair, which I love. It's very raw. He just seems like a man on a mission who has a lot to say.
It's not about imagery. It's not about even the brushwork. To me, it just has a presence that defies words. We've had the painting up for a little over a year, and it doesn't diminish. It still has that great ability to command your attention.
Paint it. Paint your impression. Don't worry about it. Just put your paint out there. Go. I'm not telling you how to paint. I'm teaching you how to think. And your job is to just stay in the process, stay open, listen to your mind, and paint. And the painting will start to talk back to you and tell you what to do. I was learning far more from the painting than I was from anything else. It was cause and effect. Mark, counter that mark with this mark, counter that color with this other color, counter this shape with another shape, different size, different textures, different angles. There is no wrong. There is just process. Just go. Keep going until it's done.
He did a second installation, just him on his own this time, and it was part of a series of artworks that I had commissioned that dealt with changing ground and the landscape and how it was changing in and around Fairfield and Vacaville, and the suburbs were expanding and, taking up the hillsides, and agriculture was changing in the valley. The orchards were being replaced by vineyards, and Jim had been passing through these orchards that were being ripped apart.
I think it was a peach grove, hundreds of trees laying on their side with the roots hanging out. This horrific looking, like a bomb went through there. And so that was it, I was going to hang these trees in this gallery. I think I got 6 or 8 trees. And I wanted to kind of look like a lynching, like they'd been lynched, pulled out of the ground, turned upside down, just humiliated, essentially.
And again, it was just this extraordinary installation that was very moving. I think the physicality of the work, you really see the size of the roots of those trees. We were sort of witnessing a hanging, the tree sort of took on the physicality of a person, and I think pulled emotion from people when they came into that gallery. You understood that changing the ground, changing the landscape, and the impact of people on this place needed to be considered fully and with open eyes, and not just with an eye towards the economy.
He would make gigantic 20-foot panels made of steel with wheels on them that you could direct these panels so that they would attract the sun, and then the sun would shine down onto these courtyards that had no light, and it would give them light.
It was a shaded area out in front of the San Francisco Art Institute. It was just shaded and dark, and it was a good place for people to hide and smoke pot, but it was pretty derelict. And I just wanted to make a connection to it. It was lacking sun. Living in San Francisco or any place where there's tall buildings, you kind of get anxious about getting a little sunlight. I remember there'd be a little patch of sun, and people would move, they'd congregate in the sun, trying to catch some sun in front of the coffee shop. And as the sun moved, they'd all have to move along with it. I just saw that as interesting. I wanted to bring sun down to this dark spot that almost never got sun. So I made a big reflector, and it shined down there, and it made a little warm spot. Got light and warmth, and sure enough, people would congregate there. And the piece itself was adjustable. Had a little steering wheel on it, so you could kind of move it across the space and manipulate the people where they would be likely to stand and pot or whatever they were doing.
Years later, he shows up on my doorstep, and he said, "I just wanted to see you. I wanted to come say goodbye to you before I sail off into the sunset."
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, type of illness which involves the motor pathways and cells of the nervous system.
I was a typical guy thinking I needed to work out more. I'm getting older, so I started working out more. I probably noticed symptoms a year prior. It's harder to run up the stairs, and getting a little heavier. It was very gradual, and you get used to it. I think I was putting a garbage disposal in a house. I realized I couldn't lift it up there, and I'm just going, this is nuts. I know should be able to. Something's wrong. You gotta go to the doctor. They stuck a bunch of needles in me, which was horrific. That's the worst test ever. They go like nails in you and put electrical charges on them and shock you and then twist them around. And she says, you've got ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And I go, oh, that sucks. She was so sad about it. I gave her a hug.
ALS stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It is a disease in which the person gradually and progressively becomes more and more a prisoner in a body that doesn't work.
I was in shock. I wasn't feeling anything. So, oh, you're handling it well. I'm not even handling it. I don't even understand what you just told me.
What happens in ALS is the nerves in the spinal column are affected, and the ability of the brain to control voluntary muscle gets damaged and progressively gets worse until the muscles stop working.
Let her go. I bought a sailboat. Figured I could have enough time to go sailing. I wanted to go down to Baja. And I wanted to go down to Costa Rica. I had a piece of property in Costa Rica. Maybe retire down there. And I was going to sail down there and just stay there and call it off, you know, that's it. Or if things got bad, I'd sail out to the Pacific and just let it happen. That was my plan. But it didn't work out. I sailed all over San Diego. It was quite wonderful, actually. And then I was on the boat probably a year. And I was walking when I first got the boat. It started getting sketchier and sketchier. And I kept, you know, getting weaker and weaker. And I'd keep compensating for this or that. And at one point I had a winch to try to help me get up and down. And then finally I fell down in the boat.
My husband Howard and I went down to see him, give him a hand with something, and he could no longer walk. He could no longer get up. He was trying to get out of the bed in the boat to greet us, and he couldn't move anymore. And we helped him out and got him out of the boat. And we said, okay, that's it. We've got to prepare for what's next. And Howard and I got him into his truck, and we drove him back up to his home in San Francisco.
ALS is also called motor neuron disease and famously known as Lou Gehrig's disease as well. The lifespan of the disease is between 3 and 5 years following diagnosis. Generally, the mind is not affected, and so thoughts, thinking, the creative process is unaffected.
It's like some kind of hell in the twilight zone, you know? Because I'm here. I'm here. I am 100% here. I can think, I can remember. Memory has gotten even better because, you know, I've got nothing else to do except think. It is what people forget. I can be sitting here and be just as happy as anybody else anywhere. Why not? What's stopping me? I can sleep as well as anybody. It's just when I go to get up, I can't get up. I can dream. I dream that I'm walking or running or flying. I'm perfectly happy. The nightmare starts when I wake up. You know, and it does every morning. It comes rushing in. Oh, I gotta move your arm, and oh, it doesn't move. Oh yeah, I'm stuck here, and nobody else can see what you're going through. They can't feel your pain. That's the disease.
He just continued to be amazing. The disease seemed never to get in his way of his creativity. He just decided, since he wasn't going to sail across the world, that instead he would put his focus back into creating art and telling his story, just telling his experience, sharing his feelings, his insights through his work. He no longer had the full use of his limbs. It's not like he could any longer pick up a piece of steel or a welding machine or a brush and communicate the way he was so used to communicating.
And at that stage, this whole studio area was filled with all these paintings, these amazing large canvases with a lot of kind of action painting that was done while he was in his wheelchair. And he had found a way to attach a long pole with a paintbrush and had people set out different colors of paints. And then the floor would have these giant canvas panels, and he would roll over and dip his brush in the paint and then start making these wonderful paintings with the wheelchair as kind of his movement. I was really struck by the paintings themselves, and that's what got me really involved in this stage of Jim's work. I think what's important to recognize about the work of Jim Kimberly is that Jim has always been a really insightful, engaged, committed, passionate artist who really has a way of connecting with an inner vision that is really compelling. And so what I was seeing in these paintings was how Jim, given the limitations that he had come up with a formula, come up with a methodology that would allow him to make images that his very high standard as an artist could accept. Put yourself in that place, right? So you're learning about your limitations and the progression of your limitations, and Jim's thinking, okay, but how can I continue to make art? And he comes up with this method.
And it was the first time I was doing any work with the wheelchair. So this was a test. I'm testing myself. Can this even be done? I'm completely full of doubt at this point that it's possible. Can I do a piece of art with something I have so little control over? It's hard to do. You don't get the result you're going for. You definitely have to be in touch with working with the accident, essentially.
What's fascinating is the courage of perseverance that involves, right? Because here he is.
I'm working on it, I'm working on it, I'm working on it. It's going back and forth. I'm pretty much ready to give up, but I know enough about art. You just stick with it.
And Jim hangs in there, and he's painting, and suddenly it starts to work.
There it is.
There it is. That idea that he's out there hoping to find a way back to his creative expression.
And there it is. The piece was done. And art revealed itself. It came through. And that was a big relief. I have this dream that I'm in this white, sterile room, semi-reclined, kind of like I am right now. I'm realizing that this is an electric chair, and I'm going to be electrocuted. And I notice kind of off its way, there's the executioner, and he's got like a switch over there. And I look around over here, and there's nobody I recognize, but I recognize them as friends and family, and it just becomes time to be electrocuted. And at this point, it was kind of funny because I wasn't really nervous, a little bit anxious about the situation, but not like you would be. And he goes to get the switch, and I'm expecting some kind of some kind of electrical noise and a shock and convulsing. And then he goes and he throws the switch, and there's nothing. There's nothing. I can still hear people, but they're just a muffled mumble. But when I say nothing, I mean there's nothing. It was like I was unplugged from everything concerning my body or my mind. Any pain, any itch, any scratch, any sore joint, a sense of gravity, nothing. It was quite amazing. Even the thoughts I had were different. I was aware I was there, but no, is this gonna hurt? I'm afraid. What's gonna happen afterwards? Or how do I look? Nothing. Free of it all. And just in an instant. Just like shutting off a light. I was disconnected from all of that. And it was amazing. What a relief. And then I realized I was was no longer attached to gravity or my body, but I started to float. And I was going up, and the ceiling started getting closer and closer, and I'm going up. And pretty soon I'm looking down on the room and the people, and then I'm going up, And then I realized I've gone through the ceiling, where the ceiling vanished, and I'm just going up towards this energy. Had no specific name or shape or sound, or it just had a warmth, and I was anxious to get there. But then I started to think, maybe I'm dreaming. And I thought, if you die in your dreams, you die in reality. And as soon as I had that thought, I was back into reality in my bed, worrying about that bullshit I had to do that day. And it was very disappointing, because the bliss, that's the only way you could understand it, is bliss. You know, you can use a bunch of bullshit metaphors, or pure love, or nirvana, or that was my dream. I wouldn't mind going back to that dream.
When I was filming him talking about his work, he was saying that the bunny is like his spirit guide.
I was thinking about bunnies. Bunnies. You say bunnies 3 times at the beginning of each month, and it brings you good luck. And I would say that's enough.
The bunny's getting peed on. The bunny is the object of the beast's jealousy. People like that, emotions like that, eventually deplete good, and the bunny's feeling depleted a little bit, almost to the point of death. Too much jealousy, too much envy. You end up with a very empty world. The people who are true and truly love and truly care can't always hold up to the weight of it. And they're beaten into submission. And if we're not careful, they will die. They need to be nurtured with love in order to flourish. The bunny is part of you. The bunny is you. The best part of you, anyway. The bunny is the best part of all of us. Destination doesn't matter. We're always where we are. You can't be anyplace else other than where you are. You're always exactly where you should be. And the bunny's there with you.